Welcome to this week's episode of A Tale of Two Scribes. I'm the host, Eric Bishop. This is a place where interesting people come to share their stories. I hope you'll support tonight's guest. As for myself, I'm a father, author, travel enthusiast, and lover of the outdoors. If you'd like to see some of my creative works, my novels, please go to my website, ericpbishop.com. Thanks for joining us tonight, and enjoy the journey. Welcome to another episode of A Tale of Two Scribes. Tonight, I'm super excited to have Jack Stewart on the program. Hey, Jack, welcome.
Hey Eric, thanks for having me on, man.
Well, thanks for coming on. Um, I was trying to think about it today. I think our first interactions maybe were 2020, that year that the world kind of went bonkers,
Yeah.
thereabouts. But I know one thing that was really cool is we got to meet up in August of 2021. I think we met in New Orleans. So BousherCon was supposed to happen there, and about a month and a half before they pulled the plug because of resurgence of COVID. I had already booked everything, and I know I could have got money back, but I was like, I'm planning. I've got breach of trust planned for scenes for there. I want to get my feet on the ground. So you were kind enough to pick me up at the airport. You brought me to Joint Base New Orleans
Yep.
and got me in an F-18 flight simulator, which was badass. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that was pretty cool. That's one of the things I love about this business is all the people that you get to meet and
Yeah.
experiences that you share together.
And of course, I gave you grief because I didn't get the backseat ride in the real plane, and Mark got it. But
Yeah.
I believe you told me I had to be like a better selling New York Times bestseller author, and then maybe there was a sliver of
Yeah,
a
no, I
chance.
didn't say that, but that's what the Admiral said.
That's what the Admiral
Yeah,
said.
that's what the Admiral said. Yeah.
So I'm not there yet. So I will just gladly watch other people that get that opportunity. But maybe one day. But it was a fun experience. I've shared that story with a lot of people, and typically if it's come up in a conversation, they're like, "No way, how was it?" And I'm glad to share with them the experience. So, but thank you.
Yeah. Glad you had that opportunity.
Yeah, it was cool. So before we dive into Jack Stewart, the writer, let's talk about Jack Stewart, the naval aviator. So was service something you grew up doing and or just like in the family? Was it something that was a family tradition, or was it something that you kind of grew up, with a different desire to have, or did something spurn you to say, I think I want to fly fighter jets one day?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it was a real tradition. My mom's dad, he was a B-17 pilot in World War II, like so
Huh?
many of that generation they served, and that was what
Yeah,
he did. I mean, I have his bomber jacket, if I can put my finger right there
back
on
there.
the wall. So he was an influence in my life. But my mom and dad grew up in the Vietnam era. My dad, he told me one time he thought about going into the army as a helicopter pilot because he already had his pilot's license and was
Mm.
flying. And he went into the recruiter's office, and this drill sergeant came out and started yelling at everyone. He's like, "Dude, I'm not even in the army yet. I'm getting yelled at. This is not for me." So he got up and left. So, so no, my parents didn't serve. I didn't have any real uncles, that served or anything like that. But it was just something that I was really drawn to from an early age. We'd go to air shows as a family, and my dad would look at all the civilian planes, the aerobatic planes,
Mm.
and I was always drawn to the gray and green aircraft that were on the other end of the flight line,
Yeah,
all the fighter jets and big planes and helicopters and stuff like that. So I kind of knew early on that's what I wanted to do.
pretty cool. So for those that don't know about the process, what was that like? Because when you signed up, is that what you declared that you wanted to try to get on the flight side and you wanted to see if you could, had the opportunity?
Well, so I went to the Naval Academy, and like most officer
Okay.
accession programs, whether it's the Naval Academy or ROTC or OCS, you don't necessarily know what your job is going to be.
Hmm.
So at the Naval Academy, we wouldn't find out until right before our senior year what we were going to they called service select.
Okay.
So whether that be in the Navy, whether it was Marine Corps Air, Marine Corps Ground, you could go Navy Air. You could drive ships, you could drive submarines, you could go SEALs, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And so, actually, for the first, I'd say, I don't know, first 2 years of my time at the Naval Academy, I kind of started veering more towards the Marine Corps, thinking I'd want to go in the Marine Corps. So, the summer before my senior year, I actually spent 2 months with the Marines. I spent a month what we call Leatherneck, which was 4 weeks in Quantico, Virginia, doing like land navigation and like simulated wars in the woods, which is, I mean, every kid's, dream, right? I mean,
Yes.
real guns with blanks and just shooting machine guns and laying in foxholes, and it was pretty cool. Um, and then I spent a month doing Fleet Marine Force, where I spent 2 weeks with the Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion in Camp
Okay.
Lejeune, and then 2 weeks with a Huey and Cobra Squadron
Hmm.
in North Carolina. And I was like, yeah, this is awesome, but I don't really want to be a Marine. I just want to fly.
Yeah.
So I came back from that and decided I was just going to stick with my kind of original plan and be a pilot.
I think I've asked you this years ago, so I believe I know the answer, but I think for the audience, they might like to hear it. So, how big of an influence was Top Gun on, you following that path?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's probably the biggest influence. A couple years ago at Thriller Fest, for my debut author speech, I got up there and I talked about how Top Gun was actually a documentary, and I still to this day believe that it was a documentary. Unfortunately, when I went through Top Gun, it wasn't like the movie because they had moved from Miramar to Fallon, Nevada, so it wasn't quite the same. No
Yeah.
one wanted to play volleyball with me when I got out my jeans and dog tags, but yeah, it's all right. It was still a really good time. Yeah, but no, I mean the second movie came out the day I retired from the Navy,
Okay.
and I kind of planned that way. I said, okay, like if Top Gun was the reason I wanted to become a fighter pilot, then the day I end being a fighter pilot is the day the sequel comes out.
Pretty, I don't know that there's coincidences in life. I think there is, I guess, but that's a pretty strong one if they're a real thing. So,
Yeah, of course.
I mean, somehow you got Tom Cruise to delay it by a couple of years and
Yeah,
pull the trigger on you
yeah.
on the day
Just a
you
couple
retire.
text messages and hey Tom, can you delay it a little bit?
He he's that kind of guy that he probably would. So he
Yeah.
definitely so I probably had asked you at the time, and if so, forgive my fleeting memory. What were your thoughts on Top Gun Maverick? Was it
Oh,
worth all those years of waiting for that sequel to come out?
yeah, I mean it was better than I hoped for. I mean, I think anybody that was influenced by the original movie was worried about the sequel
Hmm.
because so many sequels or remakes, they just suck so bad
Yeah.
and it just kind of ruins the original. So I sat through it, but when the opening scene started, and you see the jets taxiing around the flight deck and the music, and I'm like, yep, this
Yeah.
is worth the wait. Like I don't care how the rest of the movie is. This was great. And it did not disappoint at all. I loved it every second. I watched it several times.
Yeah.
I took my daughter to see it probably for like my fifth time, and she wore my leather flight jacket in the theater. It was just really cool.
That's a cool memory. Yeah, I was there opening night. Went saw there's a IMAX. There's one closer now, but at the time I went to the closest IMAX theater about maybe 45 minutes an hour from me. So I was in the theater, and I mean the place went nuts. It was so fun, and my son was not happy with me that I went and saw it without him, so I took him to see it the next week.
Yeah.
And then I think I went with a group of friends for a third time. I know I saw it three times in the theater, and each time. It's my son's favorite movie. So it's just he's child of the 80s too. He was born in the wrong
Yeah.
decade for sure. I actually went back and then watched the original. Once the DVD came out, I went back and watched the original and still really enjoyed it. But then as I was kind of like in my brain comparing it, I'm like, I like the second one better, which that's extremely rare for
Yeah.
movies to ever like the sequel or a follow-up movie. I think the Bourne movies, I've started to show those to my daughter. We just finished the second one last week, so we'll probably watch the third one this coming week. Those are ones too that I think, in my opinion at least, they've kind of almost but the first one was great. I loved it, but they didn't fall off, which so many
Right.
second and third movies, by the time you get to the third one, like The Hangover or something. By the time you get past
Yeah.
the first one, you start watching the second, third, you're like, man, this is just a cash grab. This
Yeah.
is a cash grab.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, they're just capitalizing on the success. But, I mean, kudos to, the team behind Top Gun that they didn't wait or that they didn't just jump on the first script that showed up for a sequel because I mean it was probably one of the most successful movies of that time. I
Yeah.
mean I know that it hugely impacted Navy,
Hmm.
recruitment and stuff. And they didn't just jump on it. They waited until the right story came along. And I was actually in the Navy when there was talk of a sequel.
Okay.
And there were we I remember there was I can't remember the actor's name, but there were a couple actors that were in Fallon, Nevada, where Top Gun's located,
Hmm.
and they were kind of walking around the base and they were checking things out and getting ready to film this movie. And we started talking about the script, and I was like, it was like all about drones and stuff. I was like, no, you're gonna ruin it. Please do not do this. And
Yeah.
so I was very pleased to see what they did, and bringing back the Tomcat and the way they did was just awesome. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Cool, cool experience to have. So Jack Stewart, fighter pilot at some point, and I know you did the reserves. Obviously, that's when I had met you. You were in the reserves. But when you got out of active duty, what are you gonna do? What's the, because especially after I know I've asked you some of these questions, just personal conversations we had, but for the audience sake, like coming from, and I know it's a job. I get when you're a pilot, of a fighter jet, it's a job. The off factor could drop off at times, or just stressful. Not a, you got a what 60, $100 million plane, under your butt. You better not screw up. But what's the transition like, and then where does Jack Stewart go after becoming a fighter pilot? Because anything else, in a
Yeah,
way, is
it's a
different. A little bit
disappointment.
of a wah wah wah.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, that's why I didn't want to be an airline pilot like most guys.
Right.
So I got my master's degree while I was still active duty, and it was in project management and international
Mhm.
business. And so I thought, you know what, when I leave active duty, I'm going to just go into business and just make a ton of money and pursue happiness that way.
Yeah.
Well, what I found out real quick was that that doesn't make me happy at all.
Yeah.
I hated working for a living. I hated always being on my phone, being distracted when I was at kids' baseball games or whatever. That getting phone calls in the middle of the night
Mhm.
from angry customers that were on the other side of the globe, and not understanding the language they're speaking. And I was like, this is just not for me. So fortunately, I was still in the reserves. I was still flying the F-18. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna fly for the airlines,
Mhm.
and in my graduate program, we actually studied Southwest Airlines, and so they were high on my list. But at the time, you needed to have a 737 type rating to apply. I
Okay.
didn't have one. Still applied. I figured if they get desperate, they'll just go down to the bottom of the barrel and pick me.
Mhm.
But I wasn't getting a phone call. So after about a year, I was starting getting nervous, and
Mhm.
so I used part of my GI Bill, went and got the type rating and the 737,
Okay.
updated my application, and the next day had an invitation to interview. So
Hmm.
interviewed, got hired Southwest, and I've been there 11 years, and it's been a really good job.
And then did you start the writing before, like, did you start writing when you were in the Navy, or did you start writing just when you became a pilot, or how did you transition then? Because I always think that's interesting because most people don't pick up a pen one day and say, I'm going to write a novel in
Yeah.
F-35. Normally it's been part of their life, but when they actually take it seriously, that's a different story.
Yeah. I mean, when I grew up, I was an avid reader. I read pretty much anything I could get my hands on. I used to joke that if I was in the bathroom and sitting on the toilet and didn't have anything to read, I would pick up a shampoo bottle or something and just read the contents. I just needed to read something. This was
Yeah.
before the days of cell phones when you could have unlimited
Right.
information in the palm of your hand.
Exactly.
Um, so libraries, bookstores, those were, places I always
Mhm.
visited. And 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 I always thought to myself, like, it would be really cool one day to publish a book. Like, I just wanted to publish one book
Yeah.
and see it in the bookstores, and that was like my goal, my kind of life goal. But I put that in the back of my mind and said,
Mhm.
okay, that's one day. One day I'll do that. One day I'll do that. Well, I went to the Naval Academy and I ended up majoring in English, not because I wanted to be a writer, not because I really enjoyed reading, which I did, but because it was like the easiest path for me to become a pilot and to graduate. I didn't want to do electrical engineering or any of the hard STEM majors that they have there. So I majored in English and quickly realized that I could write pretty easily. Like a lot of my classmates would come to me for help with their papers. I would routinely write papers, drunk, coming back from the bar. You just sit down and hammer out a paper. I remember there was one class.
That's the anthology I want to see, Jack.
Yeah, yeah,
Put
yeah.
that
Well,
baby together.
I still have some of them because
I'm
there was
sure.
one that I wrote that I compared a Greek tragedy to Jerry Springer, and I wrote it like in a kind of a fictional format.
That could get you a
And
private jet if you put it together the
yeah, yeah.
right
Well,
way.
it got me an A, and that's all I really cared about.
That
But I wrote it
works.
completely drunk, and so I was like, well, I can do this, and that's what the famous Hemingway quote is, write
Right.
drunk, edit sober. So anyway, I've always enjoyed writing. I've enjoyed the process. I've always thought, okay, one day I'm going to write a book, and so I would
Mhm.
start a chapter, and then I would just kind of throw it in a drawer somewhere and
Yep.
just forget about it, and then I'd get bored, and I'd write another, start another book, and I was always kind of looking for that one story that just wanted to write about,
Mhm.
and never really found it until I'd say my last deployment. I was working with the Joint Special Operations Command doing some counterterrorism stuff
Mhm.
and saw a lot of really cool things like you're talking about Jason Bourne. Like I was seeing some stuff that's
Right.
like legit out of those kinds of movies. And I knew I couldn't write about those specifically, but I could write about the people that I was interacting with
Right.
and then I got to serve with. And so I started writing my first book. And
Okay.
of course, like most new authors, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And when I mean, that was in 2015. I finally finished it. And when COVID happened, COVID kind of gave me the time to just sit down and, okay, I'm going to finish it. I
Hmm.
finished it, thought it was great, and, sent it out to basically crickets and a bunch of rejections. And then I
Yeah.
wrote another one and wrote another one and over the course of 4 or 5 manuscripts realized
Hmm.
I didn't know what I was doing on that first one, and so I really kind of needed to become a student of the art, and so I honestly joke that I kind of accidentally fell into being a writer because I
Hmm.
just did it as a challenge to myself, and then that challenge ended up getting me an agent and landing me a 4 book deal, quickly followed by a 3 book deal, quickly followed, you know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, now I have deadlines.
Well, it's that perseverance that I think, and it's a fairly common story where people that start it, I think a lot of times they don't do it with like the dollar signs in their. Not that no one dreams. Of course, we all dream as writers, but you do it because you have a story to tell. You have something inside you need to get out. You have no idea if it's going to resonate. You have no idea if anyone besides your mom or your spouse or whatever is going to like it. And even if they like it, they're probably lying to you because it probably is crap. At least that's what you tell yourself. But the fact of the matter is, you've got to get that story out. And then and I always tell people, once you get that story out, once you finish that first draft, then the sky, this is the limit. Maybe it doesn't go anywhere,
Yeah.
but it can't go anywhere until you finish that first draft. And, a similar story, we've talked about it over the years. It took me 4 books before I had anyone be like, yeah, I'll publish you.
Hmm.
It took that long. And I thought that's just like you. I finished my first book in September of 2014. And when I finished it at Yosemite, I was there. I planned it that way. I was getting close. I had a work trip coming up, and I'm going to stay in Yosemite for a full day, and I'm going to write the end while I'm sitting in Yosemite Park. Top 10 moment of my life still to this day. Great experience. And I thought, here it comes. Here comes the riches, the fame, the
Yeah.
adoration, all that stuff. Yeah, that book's still sitting on the computer that we're talking on now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
nothing happened with it. I tried to pitch it. I went to Thriller Fest for a year and did all that and had some people like, it's okay. And I'm like, I then realized, okay, just because you did something you wanted to do, now do it better the next time. So
Right.
that's what I did with the second book. Still didn't get it. So then I did
Right.
the third. And then, by the fourth, I kind of felt, and even now, I'm in a writing mode now, but I'm still editing the next book. So I'm kind of dual hats most nights that I'm doing stuff. The difference now is I've got this no arrogance behind me, but I have this confidence behind me of, hey, you're putting out a sixth book here and then a seventh. I'm putting out two in 2026. So you kind of know what you're doing and you kind of have that comfort level that then you're just like, okay, just keep getting better at it though. So you know how to put a story together, you know how to, you know how to transition stuff. You kind of know the ingredients you need to make that sausage. Make it taste a little better each time. Get a
Right.
little better on your spices, figure some things out, and it's an interesting process. I think you'd agree. It's a very interesting process to get to that point, in
Yeah,
especially.
it is. And the other thing, I mean, the other thing that I tell people that when they're just getting started, because so many people will, they've got one good story, right? And they
Yeah,
want to write this story and they want to publish it, and they will take years to perfect it, rework it, retool
right.
it, which is great. I mean, you absolutely should. But I ask them to keep in mind what your end goal is. Is your end goal to publish one book, or is your end goal to be a successful novelist that will routinely deliver? Because if it is, you
Hmm.
can't take all that time. You have to move on. You can't, just get slogged down in the editing process and just, you
Yeah.
know, write it, write the first draft the best you can, go back, edit it the best you can, and then
Hmm.
move on.
Yeah.
I think people that kind of get stuck with that one story idea and don't move beyond it, they stagnate, they get
Yep.
stuck. And
They really
so,
do.
yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you have, and I know they say it for music as well as for writing. If you have your whole life to whatever, write your first album or produce your first album, do your first book, and then if it's actually picked up,
yeah,
you got 6 months to a year, and especially in the publishing industry, especially if you're making them money, they don't want you to say, "Hey, I'll get back to that second book when I get back
yeah,
to it." It's like, no, you're going to deliver that book September of such and such year, 11
right,
months from
right.
now. And if you haven't, of course, now, and you know the business even better than I do. Nowadays, a lot of times, most authors are not getting that first deal signed unless they already have a second book in the hopper done. Maybe need some editing still, but it's not a idea for a second book. I've got a second book done.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, yeah. My experience was I had one done, and then at best I had like a 3 book arc that I was, kind
mhm,
of in my head planned out. And then the publisher offered me a 4 book deal, but they wanted a synopsis for each book
right,
and a title. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know. I had I had 3 books planned, and now I got to come up with a fourth.
right.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I came up with something that it ended up being completely different from what it ended up being.
Sure.
But
Well, especially for
yeah,
your Battleborn series, they had a pretty aggressive time frame on when they wanted to release it versus it
yeah.
wasn't going to be because you got 4 books out in what, like 2.5 years, 2 years
Uh,
for them?
yeah. Let's see. Book one was November
2023, right? Or is it?
2023, and then I had yeah, and then I had yeah, and then I had February and November of 2024 for books 2 and 3, and
Yeah.
then um
Book
what
four
was
came
it?
out in August, I think.
August of
Yeah.
2025 for book 4. So yeah, it was, but the delivery schedule for me was basically every 6 months. So I,
Right.
signed the contract, and then it was like every 6 months is when I had to deliver the
Hmm.
next book. But like I said, then I ended up falling into another 3 book deal. So then those 3 books kind of fell on top of those four. So it was just like
Right.
I had to kind of rework the way I did. That's where my project management background kind of came in
Yeah.
handy. It's like, okay, no, got to finish this one by this date, so I have enough time to write this one. And yeah, it got a little chaotic a little bit, but
Is it another way that following the career path you did was kind of a blessing because you weren't tied to a desk job for 40 hours a week, that you had a little bit maybe more flexibility with writing or more time, that you be in hotels, when you're on a stretch of travel that you could sit in a hotel, you have no distractions besides what you make for yourself. You don't have your kids, your wife, practices. You can kind of just
yeah,
tunnel vision and say, okay, I got to get up in the morning for the flight. So I got 5 hours I can just knock out multiple
yeah.
chapters or
I
whatever.
mean, in an ideal world, I'd say being an airline pilot is probably one of the best jobs because of that reason. But there were so many times where I was like, okay, I've got to get this many words done on this trip to kind of stay on pace. And then,
Hmm.
we'd have weather or we'd have maintenance delays or something, and then we just the day would just completely explode into,
Yeah.
not giving me any time at the hotel. And then it became okay, I can choose between either writing or I can choose between sleeping, and sleeping is kind of a safety thing. So
Yes.
I'd come back from trips having not written a single thing.
Okay.
And so sometimes it's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse.
Hmm.
Um, I definitely get my best writing done right here in my office.
Okay.
Um, so time in between trips is when I do it,
Hmm.
but yeah, it is helpful to have, when I'm here, when I'm not on a trip, when I'm in my office at home, I don't have anybody calling me. I don't have any other distractions. The
Yeah.
kids are at school and I can get stuff done.
Right.
So, yeah, it is a blessing to have this job, but it's also, it's a beat down.
Hmm. Yeah. Yes. How was that transition for you? Just flipping back to that for a second. So going from life in the Navy and then kind of the business world that we talked about, and then getting over, was the airlines, was there things that weren't what you expected, or was it kind of what you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, I think the airlines was exactly what I thought it was going to
Okay.
be, and it's a great job. I tell everyone I fly with that, like, I envy the people who just go to work and then go home and have nothing else because they can enjoy their time off at home.
Right.
Like I always ask guys I fly with, "What are you going to do on your time off?" "Oh, I'm just going to hang out in the pool with my wife and drink daiquiris." And like, that sounds amazing. I just don't have the time to do that. And
I've got two
so.
books I got to
Yeah,
knock out in the
exactly.
next 4 months.
Yeah, I just got a deal for a book that's due in 3 months. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I envy people that are like that. That's not the way I'm wired.
Right.
I'm not wired to just sit back. And in fact, I actually haven't been flying a whole lot lately in the past couple weeks. And I had a 4-day trip planned for this week, and somebody texted me and asked if they could have it, and I really didn't want to fly a 4-day because I've been
Mm.
off for so long. And I said, "Yeah,
Hmm.
take it." And then I started getting antsy, going, "Oh man, I really wish I hadn't given away that 4-day." And so then I'm trying to find something to do, and I managed to come up with a 2-day, which is a lot more palatable for
Yeah.
me. But yeah, I mean, I get antsy after a while. I need to do something, and I mean, I've been doing stuff while I'm here. I mean, I've been sitting in this
Right.
office editing books and stuff, so it's not like I'm sitting around doing nothing.
Hmm. A little bit of a type A personality, Mr. Stewart.
Hmm. Yeah, shocking.
Just,
Yeah.
I'm glad the Navy employs those type of individuals because that's who I want flying a multi-million-dollar
Yeah,
jet.
either they employed me like that or are they training me to be that way. I don't know which is which, but I got to talk to my counselor about that.
That's probably more likely based on the military. Everyone, I
Yeah.
never served, but some of those closest to me have, and I definitely one of them in particular who retired a couple years ago. He was my college roommate. I've told the story probably on the podcast before. This guy came in my freshman year, and I thought, 5 minutes into meeting this guy, I was like, this guy is a blanking, blankety blank, blank. And then we'll say the word dick at the end. I'm like, I will never talk to this guy as soon as this purgatory ends with having to be his roommate. Yeah, so that was what, 30, 29 or 30, it might be 30 years ago. No, 31. Holy crap, 31 years ago now. And yeah, we go on trips and stuff together. We
Yeah.
we do
Yeah.
stuff together now. But he dropped out after his junior year. He had took a year off and then came back. So he was a year behind me in the way the flow was happening. And then when I graduated was his junior year. And that summer he was like, I ain't going back. I was like, what? You're not going to finish a degree? And he was doing something his mom wanted him to do, wanted to get an
Yep.
education degree, go to college, make yourself something. And he had told me for years, I want to join the army. And of course, I'm like, what's wrong with you, dude? Go to school. But I gave him complete credit of he literally went and went to the recruitment office, signed up, served 20 years. He was in special operations, Green Beret. I've got stuff behind me that are flags he's gave me. I guess they're back behind my head, but I also have a pile that's in storage that I just don't have the wall space for. Of he was there during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He went across the Jordan line. I have the Iraqi flag that was hanging between Jordan and Iraq that he brought me back, and um, I was able to see those experiences through his. He now that he's all, I can say he would have a hard drive. I'd go over his house and he'd just start
Oh
showing
yeah.
pictures, and I'd be like, "Is that a noose?" And he just like, "You didn't see that." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Well, he'd be showing me these things, and I'd be like, "Holy cow!" But on the flip side of it, and I saw that, man, to have that lifestyle and to spend 20 years. it's extremely difficult to like have a family back home. And
Yeah.
because and he was gone a lot. He would take anytime he could go, he would go because to him he had no enjoyment sitting at Fort Campbell training or sitting in an office getting lectured. He's like, I joined the military to be out there doing something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's crazy that he went through like with you retirement. He's gone through his career. Now he does contract work and it's just, but I saw that change. So I had met him at 19 and we're both 49 now. So I kind of saw like what that did to him from a personalities perspective. And you go through experiences like that and it changes you.
Yeah.
There's no way it doesn't change you. So,
Yeah. No, that's absolutely correct.
but we need those people. You need to have,
Yeah.
we're not Switzerland. We're not some neutral country that can just,
Yeah.
although I say that, and guess what? Switzerland, you serve. You don't get a choice. You have forced, I believe it's 1 year, kind of like, I don't think it's two, I think it's 1 year. At least last I knew, they have, forced subscription, not conscription, whatever that word is. You're going to serve in the Swiss military for a year, which, as someone that didn't serve, I kind of years ago was like, man, I wish the US had a 1 year thing for like everyone you turn 18, you're gonna serve. You don't have to serve any more than that, and we're not gonna go throw you on the front line of a battlefield or something necessarily. But I think it gives you that sense of discipline, patriotism, things that I hate to say it, you're probably not getting through the education system.
Yeah.
And you might not be getting from your home if you had no one in the family that served. So, I think it would be a good thing. I don't think it will ever happen, just the way
No.
the country works. But I think for at least for myself, I would have been open to it. I don't think they want a 49-year-old now to probably do that. I was hiking yesterday and I fell, which I don't fall very often. I'm not super athlete at all, but I'm not a lousy athlete. I'm middle grade. I can do just about anything okay, and I hike all the time. It was literally this huge drop off. There was ropes. We had to go down this river, and there was a pile of leaves. And I went to step over the leaves, and I didn't see that there was a root under there, and it was like ice. And so I went back. My leg went under me, and I heard pop. And my buddy that was with me was like, "Did you break it?" Because he's like, "We're 2 miles from the car."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
I
I
don't want to
popped up,
carry
and I
you.
was like, "I think I'm okay." He goes,
Yeah.
"So we turned back." I was like, that river is like 100 yards down there, and we've gone for 2 miles to see that river. I wanted to see what the hurricane had done to the Green River. Yeah, I'm stubborn. I went down, I went down that. I took the rope and I went down it. Advil and ice last night, and I went for a mile walk to start my day. So I was like, okay, I'm not nothing bad happened, but so I don't think the military wants me though. They're like, yeah, no, you're not carrying a
Yeah.
80 pound rock to help our country.
Oh,
So.
they don't want me anymore either, so it's okay.
That's okay. It's a young man's game, though.
Hmm.
I know I had conversations with that years ago, like Brad Taylor when he was getting ready to have one of his knee surgeries. We might have been in New York or whatever, was having drinks, and he was kind of telling me what he had to go through, and I was like, "From what?" He's telling me, "Oh yeah, okay, that does make sense. You were doing what? Okay, I see how those joints wear out." So,
Yep. Yep.
um, so back to writing. So. You get the 4 book deal, and we talked about that and how that, what you had to do to make that happen. So then in the course of that happening though, all of a sudden you get the deal with Chad, correct?
Yep. Yep.
So how did that come about and what was that, an unexpected surprise that was pretty neat thing to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely unexpected. I was on a trip actually. I had just landed and turned my phone on, and I got a text message from Jeff Wilson from Andrews and Wilson, and he said, "Do you know who Chad Robichaux is?" I said, "No idea." And he said, "Okay, well, would you ever have any, interest in ghostwriting?" And I was like, "Okay, now I need to find out who this guy is." So I Googled him
Right.
and looked him up and saw his platform and kind of saw what he stood for. And I said, "Yeah, I'm not really interested in ghostwriting, but I'll talk to him." And so Jeff put us in touch and we talked on the
Mhm.
phone and I, basically told him straight up, like, "Look, dude, I'm just getting my career started. I'm not doing it for the money.
Mhm.
Again, you shouldn't go into writing for the money.
Mm-mm.
And I'm really just trying to get my name out there. And so I'm willing to, go into a partnership with you and write this with you, but I'm not going to, write it myself, and then you take all the credit and
Yeah.
give me a check, and I disappear. And so
Right.
so he called me back like the next day and said, I've been praying about it, and I think you're the right person for it. And we had a
Mm.
lot of shared experiences,
Hmm.
with JSOC and stuff. And so,
Yeah.
he said, let's do this thing, and said, got it. So,
Mm.
I was like, what do you want to write about? And he goes, I said, do you have a plot? And he's like, yeah, I just want to write about advanced force operations. I'm like, okay, any plot developed at all? He's like, nope. Any bad guy? He's like, let's make it a politician. Everyone hates politicians. It's like, okay,
True.
all right. So let's work on this. So we talked on the phone a lot, with a lot of text messages, and I kind of plotted out something, and I sent it to
Hmm.
him, and really the first book, Silent Horizons, really ended up being kind of mirrored his career trajectory a little bit,
Okay.
because Chad was a Force Recon Marine
Yeah.
that then ended up with the Navy's JSOC task force doing advanced force operations, in denied environments, and so we incorporate a lot of his personal experiences into that first
Hmm.
book. And so we wrote a kind of an outline for basically three books, and we
Hmm.
wrote sample chapters, and then went out on submission with just kind of a proposal, and Tyndale came back and offered us a three-book deal.
Wow.
And it was kind of funny because they said, oh, we want the first one due this time. I can't remember the exact date. And just doing the math, I was like, that means I'm gonna have to get started right now before we even
Yeah.
have a contract. And so I kind of did that. I, kind of got the ball rolling before we even had a contract, just knowing I was gonna have to make that deadline so that I could
Hmm.
then go back to my Battleborn series and work on those books. And then, anyway, just I wasn't expecting it, but it was really too good of an opportunity to pass up for a couple reasons. One, Chad is a great human being that does some
Hmm.
amazing things. They started the foundation, Mighty Oaks, which helps treat veterans with PTSD,
Right.
does it from a faith-based perspective,
Hmm.
which fits with Tyndale being a Christian publisher. We were able to bring a lot of our beliefs and a lot of our personal experiences into it. But we
Yeah.
didn't want this book to be, preachy. We didn't want it to be like beat you over
Right.
the head with Christianity and you're going to go to hell if you don't believe this. We wanted it to be something that would resonate with people who'd been there and done that,
Hmm.
and maybe didn't really know what they believed in.
Yeah.
And maybe this gives them a jumping off point from where they can kind of learn more about Jesus and learn more about, some of the salvation that our faiths believe
Hmm.
we get through following Jesus. And so it's been really good. It's been really well received. The first one was USA Today bestseller.
Hmm.
But more importantly, Chad has shared text messages with me, people who have gotten help because of this book.
Yeah.
Or I met a guy in a bar on an overnight one time that told me no less than three times that he didn't want to be a statistic, but he knew who Chad was, and
Mm.
talking about this book and talking about Chad's experiences, I was able to get him in touch with Mighty Oaks,
Wow.
and he ended up texting me a week later saying, "Dude, you saved my life. I was going to kill
Mm.
myself." So
Unbelievable.
yeah, I mean, so it's a very that series is very special to me.
Yeah.
Not so much from the writing, notoriety, or financial perspective, but really from what it
Yeah.
means to give back to those of us who've served.
There's an element to life. I think it's a faith-based element, but there's an element of life of things happen for a reason. Like I've had this conversation with someone recently. Something was going on, and they said, "Well, I got lucky," and I'm like, "No, you didn't get lucky.
Hmm.
That's not how it works." Like, well, you don't
Yeah,
believe in luck, and I was like, I'm not saying that things don't happen that you can't explain. Absolutely, I said, but for the most part, I kind of stick to that philosophy is luck is where opportunity meets preparation.
yeah,
So and I see that for the writing world is people will say, well, this author, look at the deal they got. They got lucky. I was like, yeah,
yeah.
they are the 1% of the 1%. But if they didn't sit down and craft that novel, if they didn't maybe write five novels before that sixth novel is the one that put their name on there, so they had to do something to make something happen.
Hmm.
Now, why doesn't everyone hit the big time? Yeah, I don't have an answer for you. I don't have an answer why I haven't been more successful. But that's also not what I'm trying to, that's not my end goal with this. The money, all the other stuff is great. But for me personally, I had hit a spot before 2014 where I was just like, I was in a corporate job, not liking what I was doing. And I just had this nagging thing because and I've said this on the podcast, probably maybe I told you one of the times we talked. I have still on the computer, I have a folder that's now called old books. At the time it wasn't. But once I started writing novels, I created a folder called books, and everything I wrote since 2014 on is under the books folder. But I have the old books folder, and it's just one story after another that's not complete. I
Yeah.
was, in college, I was after college, and I was in a call center type job. I'd go my lunch break or at night, and I'd write these stories. I'd write 20 pages, I'd write 50 pages over the course of 6 months, and I never did anything with it. So I hit that spot in 2013, 2014. It's like, I want to write a novel. I know I have stories in me. I've got to, not saying I was gifted, but I know the way my imagination worked. I'm wasting it by just, doing life and watching Netflix or whatever at the time, watching DVDs at the time, whatever it was. Um, and there's something more that I'm supposed to do. Now the struggle has been is how do you get those ideas out to a larger mass? But again, I don't stress over it. So if one of my books, my Body Man series is my good selling series, the Omega Group series really isn't. It doesn't sell as well as the Body Man series, and I haven't cracked the code of why. I've still been trying to think about that. But at the end of the day, that's a passion series for me. My Troy Evans character is one of the first, it was the first big character I wrote for a full-length novel. It's like I have this connection that I've always wanted to get that out there. And I try to it's not a faith-based series in any way, shape, or form, but one of my characters in there is and talks about it. And it's a way of sharing stuff that, man, like you just said, maybe one person would resonate with that got the book. Well, that's amazing. That's an amazing opportunity to have. And how can you have those? Write your stories.
Yeah.
Keep writing the stories. If someone doesn't publish them, maybe you just doesn't get published, or maybe you self-publish it, or maybe you write a better story the next time and that one gets published. But and I think all authors, you've got to have that drive. And I know people write a few times and they get frustrated with the industry, or they get frustrated with sales, or
Hmm.
whatever, life happens, and I totally get that. But I know for me, there's stories inside me. That's what I'm going to keep doing. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't pay the bills, that's okay. That's why I have a good corporate job to pay the bills. The writing's fun, and
Yep.
if I had to eat off of what I sold every day, might be have a different
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
okay. That's not what I'm doing it for. So it's always great to interact with people and have that kind of that common thread because it's so few people can do this, and that's their career, and that feeds, family of four. That's what takes care of a family of four. I mean, the chance of doing that in the writing world is slim, and
Yeah.
you have to understand that if you're treating it like a business. Can you be one of the slim minority? Yes, you absolutely can. Will you? That's harder to answer if you will. But you can't if you don't do the hard work. And when you get back home from your flights, if you don't sit your butt down and write your stories, they're not going to write themselves.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right.
um, we're going to talk about the Clancy stuff briefly, but I want to talk about that at the end because we've had the personal conversation about Tom Clancy in the past, just you and I. But the W.E.B. Griffin and Presidential Agent series, direct action. How did that occur? And was that something that when that opened up, you're like, was that a series that you had read when you were younger that you're like, dang, this is cool that this is happening?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that Griffin was definitely an author that I read. He was one of those, Clancy, Griffin, Larry Bond, Stephen Koontz, Dale Brown. I mean, they're just like so many of these authors from the Cold War era that I
Yeah.
read growing up. And so I had read,
Badge of Honor series is what my dad used to have, and
yeah,
that's what I started reading. So when I heard about your deal, I was like, oh, that's cool. I know who this
yeah,
is. So,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd say the one of the first series that I really got into was the Brotherhood of War series. I found a book called, The Berets, on
yeah.
my friend's shelf, and it was green and
Hmm.
it was green berets, and I was interested in special forces, so I pulled it off the shelf and I read it, and anyway, got hooked on the series.
Yep.
At the Naval Academy, I got into the Corps series, and that's kind of what led me to wanting to be a
Hmm.
Marine.
Hmm.
And so, this was one series that I hadn't read, primarily because it kind of came out after 9/11. At that time, I was overseas and,
Right.
fighting in wars and stuff, and I guess didn't have, time to read that or didn't want to read that stuff when I was, in
Hmm.
war. Um, and so no, I hadn't read that series at all. But what happened was when I became friends with Jeff Wilson and
Hmm.
Brian Andrews, and they had written Rogue Asset, which was book number 9 in the series.
Right.
I picked it up to support them and I read it and I was like, oh, this is a fantastic book. Put it down. Didn't think there was going to be a follow-on because, usually a book kind of, one book a year in a series kind of is, and after a year went by and there was no word about anybody writing anything else, I thought, okay, well, that series is over.
Hmm.
And then it just so happened that where I was in my writing journey, I had, I was contracted for 7 books and I had turned in the 6th one, and I had a full year to write book 7. And so I was like,
Hmm.
"Hallelujah, the stress is off,
The
and
stress is
I can just like kick back,
little did
relax."
Jack know.
It was like 4th of July, like literally the 4th of July, and I was like, "Okay,
Hmm.
this is fantastic. I can take a break." And then my agent called and said, "Hey, would you be interested in writing for the W.E.B. Griffin estate?" And I was like, well, I thought that series was dead, but yes,
Hmm.
absolutely I would.
Right.
And so I had a meeting with Tom Colgan. We talked about it, and he basically said, "Okay, now just let me know what it's going to be about." And I was like, "I don't even know the series really. I read the last one." He's like, "Just pick up where Jeff and Brian left off. It'll be good." And so I immediately went back and read some of the reviews of their book, and I
Yeah.
quickly realized that the fans of the series kind of highlighted certain characters, legacy characters that weren't included in their book. So now I
Right.
was like, ooh, like who are these people? Like who is Sweaty? Who's Max? Who's
Yep.
Two Gun Young? Who's Dick Miller? And so I had to go find out who these people were. So I started at the beginning, read all the
Hmm.
books, and quickly realized that Andrews and Wilson left me with a giant sandbox of toys to play with
Hmm.
that they hadn't touched.
Right.
And one of the things, if you haven't read Griffin, one of the things that makes him special as an author to me is that all the characters are connected and they're
Hmm.
connected throughout an entire series. They're like family. Like so and so's dad went to West Point, was classmates with so another person's dad, and they connect, at different points throughout the series. And so I felt it was very important to have those relationships, and have those relationships carry on
Yeah.
because what Andrews and Wilson did was they advanced the story about 20 years
Okay.
and which is cool. But it wasn't quite 20 years, maybe 15 years or something like that. But
Hmm.
what was cool is that now the main character, the original main character, Charlie Castillo, is older, so he's not the young Green Beret he was kicking indoors and doing really cool stuff for the president. So they introduced a new character. They introduced this guy, Pick McCoy, and again, as a fan of the core series, I recognize the name McCoy
Hmm.
because in the core series there was a Kenneth McCoy, and his best friend was Malcolm Pickering, and so Kenneth McCoy named his son Pickering McCoy after his best friend, and
Gotcha.
so now Pick in the book that Anderson Wilson introduced is the junior, so he's the son of Kenneth McCoy,
Hmm.
the grandson of Kenneth McCoy. And so I really liked, okay, well, that's really cool. They did that. That's kind of definitely a Griffin-esque thing to do.
Right.
But now I got to figure out how to introduce or bring back all these characters that weren't even mentioned in their book and
Hmm.
do it in a way that is satisfying to readers. And I found that to be a very fun thing for me to do. Sweaty was Charlie Castillo's pregnant wife
Hmm.
that wasn't mentioned in the Andrews and Wilson book, and so I was kind of left like, why would they not mention his pregnant wife? Like, what happened to her? What happened to the baby?
Hmm.
He had a an illegitimate son. What happened to him? He
Hmm.
had a dog that was with them throughout. What happened to the dog? So it was really fun for me to kind of piece all those things together and weave them into the future that Andrews and Wilson had created, and hopefully I did it in a way that fans of the Anderson Wilson book will appreciate
Hmm.
because I took what they did and ran with it, and then fans of the original series will also appreciate because I'm bringing back characters that haven't been talked about in quite some time.
So what's the storyline? What happens in the Presidential Agents series where you get it from?
Okay, so again, the main character Charlie Castillo was the original presidential agent. He's now older and he's been retired. In Rogue Asset, the president brings him out of retirement to resurrect the the presidential agent role to go after the Secretary of State. So in doing that, he brings a kind of an understudy, Pick
Hmm.
McCoy, a Marine Raider, up. And at the end of their book, Pick isn't ready to assume the reins of being presidential agent, but he's on the cusp.
Hmm.
So what I did in direct action is I basically put him in a situation where he didn't have a choice.
Okay.
So in the beginning of the book, Charlie Castillo ends up he's in Virginia Beach and there's a terrorist attack, and he ends up trying to stop it and gets shot. And so now he's in the hospital, and the president
Okay.
has no choice but to kind of rely on his understudy and put him in the role of presidential agent. And so Pick's job now is to try to figure out what happened. Why are these people attacking? And what is there going to be another attack and to
Hmm.
prevent that attack and so it definitely follows kind of in the Griffin style of kind of a globe-trotting adventure. They go
Yeah.
to Mexico, they go to Vienna, and they're kind of piecing together all these clues to figure out what's going to happen next. But one of the cool things about it for me personally as a Naval Academy graduate is that Anderson Wilson made Pick a Naval Academy grad.
Hmm.
And so I was able to have flashback sequences from when he was a midshipman at the Naval Academy because the first book in the series, By Order of the President, they did the same thing with Charlie Castillo as a cadet at West Point and then as a young Apache pilot in the Army. And so I kind of wanted to honor, the Griffin by doing the same sort of thing with
Hmm.
Pick McCoy. And so it was really fun for me, but I ended up making it so that those flashback sequences weren't just for background, but they actually mattered to the story. They
The
mattered to
story.
the
Yeah.
plot. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, it's such a cool, like, for a full circle moment when you grew up reading an author and then an opportunity opens up years later to, take on these characters that are beloved by readers. And to bring them to the future, bring them to now's time period and get to kind of
Hmm.
share what's happened with whichever character comes into the plot. And yeah, I think it's kind of cool, which then segues into, I know, a conversation we had years ago where obviously Tom Clancy, I think for most of us that write thrillers, is probably on the Rushmore. Kind of
Yeah.
got a lot of us into writing for sure. That was one of the series that I don't remember now which book my dad gave me first. It could have been The Hunt for Red October. I just don't remember. But I know when he gave me a Tom Clancy book, I just remember that feeling as I've kind of gone back to it over the years of like that first time I read Tom Clancy, it's like I've got to read the next one. I've got to
Yep.
read it.
Yep. Yep.
And as I started my own writing journey, even in college when I was writing, my brain always went back to, well, how would Tom Clancy do this? It's kind of
Hmm.
had that. And then Vince Flynn really for me took over because I thought what Vince did was took the Clancy kind of formula, but abbreviated it. So instead of giving you a Tom Clancy, 4,500 or 6,000 word chapter, you got a 1,500 or 1,800 word chapter. So he kind of like compressed everything. And so when
Yeah.
I started then writing, it's like, yeah, I want to write like Clancy, but I actually want to write like Flynn. I actually want to like bring that stuff in like him. So for you to then get to this point in your career where you then get a phone call or an email or however you got it, where, hey Jack, are you interested in
Yeah.
writing for Jack Ryan, the Tom Clancy series? It's like, what was that like? Because I know that was a goal of yours. We had we talked about that over the years, and again, kudos to you because you put in the hard work and opened up opportunities for yourself that you do get that call.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've made it a secret that was one of my goals when I started getting serious about this, that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to do. Um, uh, they kind of say be careful what you wish for, it's
Right.
and I kind of I honestly don't feel that way. I know I've heard from several other guys that have been able to write in either the Jack Ryan series or the Junior series that they get the call and they're kind of struck with dread.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't really feel that, um, but I did feel like an immense responsibility
Yeah.
to write the best possible book that I could
Right.
because, for me as a fan, first and foremost, I didn't want the series to end because of something I did. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to add to the series
Right.
and and I wanted other fans, to read the book and go, yeah, that was good.
Absolutely.
And so that's my motivation. And I'll never forget when I sat down to write the first line and the first time I wrote Jack Ryan Jr., I stopped and I just looked at it and I was like, I can't write another line. Like I just, I stared at the screen literally for like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
just completely in awe of, I mean, you've known me since before I was, I don't know, before I was even agented probably.
Yeah,
And
before you had, yep.
yeah, and
Yeah.
to think, in a relatively short amount of time where I've ended up,
Hmm.
and I do need to stop and just, be very grateful for the opportunities I've had.
Sure.
Um, and this is just another one for me.
Mhm.
I'm thrilled with the opportunity. And you asked about how I learned about it. It's kind of funny because Ryan Steck is a friend of mine, so the Real Book
Hmm.
Spy, and I got a text message from him one day, and it just had like champagne, bottles and like champagne glasses and confetti and stuff, emojis, and he's like, "Bro," I'm like, "What are you talking about? What's going on?" And he goes, "I just heard the news." And I'm like, "What news?" And no, you know what I'm talking about. I'm like, I literally have no idea what you're talking about. So I was actually getting ready to get in the car and drive down to College Station to visit my son. I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about.
Hmm.
So he calls me and he goes, yeah, I just heard, like, you're just gonna be the next Clancy out there. I'm like, nope, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't heard anything. And he goes, you haven't heard about this from your agent? I'm like, no. And so like I immediately called my
You're an
agent.
important person to let know on this
Right,
subject
yeah.
matter.
So I left my agent a message. He called me back and said, "Well, I'm hearing some things. There's a possibility that you could be offered the opportunity to write, but nothing's a done deal yet. So don't pop any champagne yet."
So tell Stack that if Colgan,
Yeah,
whoever told him this,
oh
what
man,
the heck?
so I'm like, now I'm calling Ryan going, what's going on? Like, what are you
Yeah,
hearing? Like, what, like, did somebody get fired? Like,
right.
I
Send
didn't
me
know
what
what
you
the,
got.
yeah, I didn't know the deal. And so, but the next day, my agent called and said, yeah, you've been offered the opportunity
Wow.
to write for the Jack Ryan Jr. series. And so I was like, okay, this is awesome. Great, like love it, happy. But Mike Woodward, who was the guy writing the junior series, is a friend of mine, and I'm
Right.
like, I need to know like in what circumstances
Yeah,
I'm
what
stepping
happened?
into. Did he step down? Like, did he get fired? Like, what happened? So I called Tom Colgan and I'm like, I need to know. Like, what am
Yeah.
I stepping into here? And he goes, no, Mike, no, he didn't get fired. He's writing the senior series. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then, so then I talked to Jeff and Brian and they told me they were leaving. And anyway,
Yeah.
it all ended up working out great. But it was just a very chaotic time. Not really how I imagined getting the phone call. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, exactly. That's hilarious though. But at the end of the day, you got your wish.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I think that's such a good lesson for people though, because I mean, as a writer, we talked about this earlier, you have to be a dreamer. I mean, I've had all kinds of dreams over the years and fantasies of this is going to happen and that's going to happen in life. And I've kind of not mellowed in my late 40s, but I've also kind of accepted the fact of, hey, that's okay if all those things don't happen. And it's okay to have those dreams and those desires, but there's a step there that, you need to take to make things happen. Or, when people say you got to get lucky, which I don't think so, whatever has to happen, something's got to happen to make those things happen. Um, but it does show you that they can happen. And that's where I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, and I think, especially when it comes to writing or any kind of creative field, it's easy to have those passions and those desires and those fantasies, but it's also just as easy to have those dreams crushed where the things don't happen. I mean, and I know we did talk before you had an agent and that's kind of the first step almost every author at least tries for if they even give up, which I did after 6 years of querying because I was just like, man, I want this so bad, and I'm starting to also get like send my book to people that are like best-selling authors that are like, no, this is good, this will get you an agent, and I'm still not getting an agent. And it's like, what am I missing here? So,
Yeah.
you have so many emotions that can go through you, but the perseverance that you have to have, the belief you have to have of, okay, cool, if this isn't the good enough book, then I just need to go write a better one.
Yeah.
I think that's that luck. That's that secret sauce that people think is really there, but actually what that is that's you not saying I have a sign um on my wall from Brad Meltzer, and he signed it, and it sits above my desk. I'm looking at it. And it's don't let anyone tell you no. I have had that thing on the wall now for years. I don't look at it every day. I don't think about it every day, but it catches my attention every so often. And it seems like that higher power that's there reminds me of that when I hit that phase of like, man, I don't have this done, or man, my marketing's not working, or this isn't going. I get that reminder of like, hey, okay, don't let anyone tell you no. Find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
Keep sticking to what your goal is. You're on the right path. You know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're just missing a step, or it's not the right time. And that's the other thing that I think we can appreciate in our aging years now, that things happen at the right time. So for you, if you had gotten that call when one book was done, that like, hey, we're interested in, and you may be coming on to the, Jack Ryan Jr. series, you probably wouldn't have been ready for it. You might have been wanting to do it, but maybe it took getting 7 books under your belt. Maybe it took that experience and what you learned to be able to take that next step. And then whatever step happens after that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do. I was in New York City. I know when Jeff and Brian uh, learned that they were going to be taking over the Jack Ryan
Hmm.
Senior series from Mark Cameron, and
Hmm.
we went out to dinner that night. And at the time, I didn't have my first. I think no, well, maybe that was my first book. Maybe my first book published that, but it didn't matter. I only had one, right?
Hmm.
And it was. I could have been disappointed because I knew that that was my goal. They knew that that was my goal. They knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I was again as a fan of the series first and foremost. I knew they'd be perfect for it. I knew they had a lot more experience than I had. I
Hmm.
knew that yeah, like I said, I wasn't ready for it, and I just knew that when the time was right, that I would. I just wanted the opportunity to
Right.
to do it. And so, whether now's the time is right or not, I don't know, but I do have the opportunity. I'm going to take full advantage of it. And that's the other thing is, you know, new authors or people that are trying to break in, like you said, you gave up, looking for an agent after 6 years. There is a little bit of a luck factor involved because this is such a subjective business, like
Sure.
you can show a manuscript to one agent and they could completely hate it. The
Hmm.
next agent could completely love it. So part of the luck is knowing, or not even knowing, because you don't even know. It's a crapshoot. The part of the luck is connecting with the right agent,
Right.
finding that one person that's going to believe in you and enough to give you that chance. And I do know so many people in your shoes that gave up because I mean this is I mean I when people ask me about this business I say it's a daily kick in the dick, and it really is. Like it just you know in my experience, in the world that I lived in the military and then in the corporate world, you did not send an email expecting to never get a response. You expected to get a
Right.
response to every email you sent.
Yes.
But and for some reason in publishing, you send out a query letter, you may never hear anything, not even a no, not even a rejection. You're lucky when you get a rejection, because
Mm.
they're actually writing back. And that to me was a very, it was a struggle for me to deal with.
Yeah.
But I just, I'm stubborn, I'm
You're
persistent,
you're persistent.
yeah, and I
Where
just kept my head down, kept writing, kept getting better.
where opportunity meets persistence.
Yep,
So,
yep, yep,
I had a rejection email come in, I think 18 months after The Body Man got published.
yeah,
So you're talking, I must have sent that email to that agent 2 to 2.5 years, because I think when I got the deal for the publishing deal was February of 21, and I
yeah,
published in November of 21. So that was what, 10 months, 9, 10 months. So I was still querying up until that December, I think, maybe November. So yeah, but again, it was one of those, but yes, super subjective business. And there's no wrong answer for people. If you want, because I think I didn't know that I said it earlier when we were talking about it. And I encourage people to try to get an agent. I probably will try to get one in a couple of years because I have a book that I started 2 years back. I'm about a third done with it. I haven't touched it in a year, but I keep making mental notes and notes on my iPhone about it because I think it's a high concept that could really kind of get me to that level that
Yeah.
in the sense of the publishing world. I don't know that it's going to be better than what I write now, but it can get the attention.
Yeah.
Um, sure, I could self-publish that one. I could put it under my Bruno Media Publishing. That one though, I think I'd like, the Emily Bessler name under. I'd like the Putnam. I'd like the whatever. I think it'd be better. So to do that, I have to go the agent route. But again, that's going to open up a can of worms of how do you do that? I know people that had agents for 4 or 5 years, had an agent, and they went through one book after another, and the agent put it out there for submission, and they never. So in
Hmm.
5 years, they had an agent. They had still never published a book.
Oh yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
not
I
a bad
mean,
thing. It's not a wrong thing. But man, you want to talk about a kick in the dick. Hey, guess what? You got an agent.
yeah.
That's all you got.
Yeah. And I hate to say it, but I mean, like the agents, and I dealt with this with my first agent that I would, we talk about a book, we talk about a book idea, and again, he's trying to guess what the industry is looking for.
Right.
He's trying, and so we come up with the best educated guess we can. And so no fault, it's not his fault, it's not my fault. But then we go out to on submission and it goes nowhere.
Yeah.
And then the response typically is, okay, well, we'll just write another one. And it's as a writer is like the most like I just spent months writing this thing and
Hmm.
poured my heart and soul into
Heart
this
and
thing.
soul.
And so it's just like, just go write another one. Really? That just doesn't
Yeah.
sit well with me, but that's the industry that we're in. And
Yep.
so if you're going into this industry, be ready for that
Yeah.
mentality that just write another one, you know? And I know you, like I said, you kind of went the self-publishing route. I know several people who have tried for years to find agents and have given up and
Hmm.
self-published. And every time they do, I feel like going, oh, don't do it. Don't give up yet. Don't give up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've also met some very, very successful self-published authors
Yeah.
who are legit making really good money. So it can be done. You can make a career out of being a self-published author. So these days, I really, I really think publishers bring very little value to the process like they used to. I mean, back in the
Hmm.
day, you had to go to a bookstore to buy a book.
Yes.
Now you can buy a book on your phone. You can buy a book anywhere,
Right.
and so um, then it just becomes, there's a whole business side of it, which we could get into a whole other podcast,
Yeah. Exactly.
but it just, for me personally, that's not what I wanted to do. For
Right.
me personally, I wanted to write the book, let someone else figure out how they're going to
Hmm.
market it, let someone else figure out how they're going to, distribute it.
Yep.
And so that was for me, that's what I wanted to do. But
Yeah, what your goal is a big thing. If you want to be a New York Times bestseller, you can't self-publish. I
yeah,
mean, you
yeah,
can, but
yeah,
it's not going to get you. If you want to walk through, Atlanta Hartsfield Airport and walk into a Hudson Books and go, "There's my freaking book. I get to sign it." You're not going to do that as a self-published author.
yeah.
So there's things that you're going to have to sacrifice things. And
Yeah, I mean,
again,
at least not initially. I mean, Colleen Hoover, Andy Weir, these are people that self-published that
correct.
then ended up getting success, but that's so
Yes.
rare. And but again, getting success with an agent is super rare too.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it comes down to what you want. It comes down to like, yeah, with the self-publish, I got a couple in my Rolodex that make a lot more money than every published author I know.
Oh yeah.
So it does happen. But I will say from having your own imprint and running it, you end up doing probably more business stuff than you do writing. So I've had to be super hyper. I was in a hyper focused writing mode this weekend, and I had a goal, and I achieved my goal. But I had to block out everything else for a period of the weekend and just say, okay, you don't look at your phone, you don't look at this. I'm back in writing brains mindset, which I haven't been in like 6 months of doing it every day. And now it's like, okay, I'll do it tonight after we film an episode. It's like, okay, I'm back in the mode, and
Hmm.
that's where discipline makes a big difference. You've instilled a lot of discipline in you with the career path you went, maybe beat into you, hyperbole wise. I've had to adopt it though as well because it's like, okay, if I want to reach certain goals, sitting around watching, a Netflix series gets me nothing. It does not help me, finish a book.
Yeah.
or come up with marketing material for the book that's coming out in a couple months, or fill in the
But I
blank.
mean,
So
and I hate to say it, but it's the same for traditionally published authors. I mean,
absolutely.
the amount of time and effort I put into something that is not actually writing a book or editing a book is astounding to me,
Right.
and and now I'm with one of the, biggest publishers, um, and I still feel like I'm putting a lot more effort
Yeah.
into it than would need to if I, was coming up in the Tom Clancy generation.
I know. Well, it's different, and that's where the business has changed, the model's changed. And again, if you're going to get into this and treat it not just as a passion project, as a business, you've got to learn. I know multiple authors that are represented by, have a big name agent, they have huge publisher, they pay for marketing. They
Hmm.
have a publicist or they have someone, might not have a publicist term, but they're out there actually paying to have that book marketed. And, when I had first heard that years ago, I was like, hey, what? You're with such and
Yeah.
such. Like, yeah, they're gonna push it. But I need to push it as well. And that
Right.
was kind of a good wake up call for me because I think I had that mindset of going, well, one day when I get to the point where I got this other book that I'm working on where I want to go agent route and all that, I can sit back. And I knew that wasn't the case because I had talked to Brad Meltzer years ago. Brad's been a super huge encouragement and a help with me on the business side. Is he had told me years ago, because he's relatively successful author, the hustle never ends. It's never you sit back and be like, autopilot, the publisher will take
Yeah.
care of this or whatever. It's like, no, your foot has to hit that ground and you're pretty much not letting off that. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how big, how you think you are or you actually are, you've got to keep staying hyper focused.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So before we tell everyone where they can get direct action, which is going to be everywhere, but before we get to that part, you also do have one last thing that you said we could talk briefly about is you're also working with Mr. Andrews and Wilson, which actually I will tell you, they were one of the ones early on, like 2018, that told me to self-publish when I was having trouble trying to get an agent. They're like, just self-publish a book. Get
Yep.
something started, do it the right way, but get something started to, kind of help with the confidence, to get your feet wet, to learn what you're doing. But now you've got a deal working out with them through Blackstone. So tell what you can tell about that. What's going
Yeah,
on?
well, I joke that they're the only ones that could step down from writing Tom Clancy, and I end up with two book deals from it. So I'm super thankful. I mean, these guys have been huge mentors to me. We're
Yeah.
really good friends, and but what they're doing is they started an imprint at Blackstone, Andrews and Wilson Entertainment, that does military thrillers, and they called me and they asked if I would be interested in writing under the imprint. I said absolutely yes, no question. And so I wrote a proposal for a book, and I'm actually just now kind of sitting down. Now that I've finished the first Jack Ryan Jr. book, I now have 159 days to turn this one into Blackstone. I've got a little timer on my computer.
That's hilarious.
I had two timers, one for the Clancy, but when I finished that, I can Clance, cancel it. I don't want to see it. So yeah, I've got the other one. So yeah, so now I'm gonna sit down and write that one, and I'm really excited about it. It's actually a story that I'm really excited about writing,
Mm,
and it's been in the back of my head for a long time, and this is
yeah.
just the best opportunity for it. It's a one book deal. I don't know if I'm gonna get another one after that. I don't know what's gonna happen, but we'll just take it one day at a time.
You can write your best thing possible and then leave it up to luck, fate, whatever terminology you want to throw out in the universe.
Yep, yep.
So Direct Action is out December 16th. This will probably air the week before that, but so everyone can go out on the 16th and we know the answer, but where do they go?
Yeah. Well, I mean, go to jackstewartbooks.com. That's my website.
There you go.
I do have all the books on there, and you can click on links to take you to Amazon or, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble, whatever. A lot of places where the books are sold. So yeah, this one should be pretty widely distributed, and I hope it's well received by the fans.
Well, Jack, thanks for coming on and thank you for being an inspiration because seeing you before you became Jack Stewart, the published author, and seeing what you've accomplished, it's encouraging. It's encouraging to people that knew you before and continue to know you. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Eric, man. Appreciate it.
Take care.